Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a really high-stakes global dilemma. Official development assistance, what most of us just call foreign aid, is facing a funding collapse.
And it's happening at the worst possible moment. We're diving into this dangerous paradox for you. Global demand for development investment is just skyrocketing.
Right, because of everything from climate change and conflicts to health crises and, massive inequality.
And yet the sources we're looking at confirm that many of the world's major donor nations are, well, they're actively cutting their ODA budgets. It's a strategic retreat.
And our mission here is to really understand the true cost of that retreat. We're basing this on insights from Carsten Staur, who's the chair of the OECD's Development Assistance Committee, or DAC.
And the DAC is, it's the standard setter. It's this international forum of 33 major donor countries.
And the chair's message is, frankly, urgent. He's saying governments are choosing short-term relief, but that choice is going to translate into much, much higher long-term costs for everyone.
We should probably mention, too, that the DI has members like Korea, which has this amazing story of going from an aid recipient back in the 50s and 60s to a major donor today. They joined in 2010.
That story is so compelling, and we will definitely come back to it. But for now, we have to look at the immediate reality. Let's unpack the pressures, because it's easy to just criticize the cuts.
It is, but donors are facing genuinely tough choices. They absolutely are.
Especially in Europe, it seems.
Exactly. The pressures are very real. You have immense fiscal tightening happening everywhere. Countries are trying to stabilize their budgets, so they're either raising taxes or, cutting spending.
And on top of that, there's the security issue.
A huge one. Particularly in Europe, the need to strengthen defense to counter Russian aggression against Ukraine and the broader threat to NATO is just paramount.
So if you're a politician, it must feel easier to fund a tank, which is tangible, than something like climate adaptation, where the results are decades away. Yeah. What's the argument against that political convenience?
That is the core tension. And the DAC chair calls this a false economy. The argument is, yes, security spending is vital, but if you treat ODA like it's just optional, you're ignoring these other threats that are growing exponentially.
Climate change being the perfect example.
The perfect example. It doesn't just pause because there's a conflict somewhere else.
And the cost of that delay is really the critical piece here, isn't it?
Precisely. The evidence is just overwhelming. The sooner governments act, and that means providing adaptation and mitigation assistance now, the cheaper it will be.
How much cheaper?
The data suggests that if we delay these investments by even a decade, the cost to fix the same problems later doesn't just go up a little bit, it can double or even triple.
Wow, so saving $1 today guarantees you'll spend $3 or $4 tomorrow.
That's the math. And while that's happening, we're also seeing the most fundamental development challenge getting worse.
Poverty and inequality.
It's a really worrying trend. It's increasing not just between nations, but also within nations. The gap is widening everywhere. This needs decisive action.
So the call to action isn't just spend more money. It's about having a more informed debate in these donor countries.
Exactly. To understand how interconnected all of this actually is.
Okay, so if the political will to just increase budgets isn't there, then the focus has to shift to effectiveness. How does the DAC make sure every single dollar is spent as strategically as possible?
That aid effectiveness agenda is absolutely central, and it really starts with one thing: prioritization.
Okay.
The focus has to remain on the poorest, most vulnerable, and most fragile countries. We're talking about the least developed countries, LDCs, and the small island states.
And why them specifically? I mean, why can't they just rely on the market?
Because they can't. They don't have significant export revenues or the stability to attract foreign investment. For them, so much of their progress in health, in education, in just building human capital, it depends almost entirely on ODA.
So that's where private money just won't go.
It won't go,
Yeah.
so we have to prioritize them.
And since those global needs are growing so much faster than the budgets, you have to find ways to leverage the aid money you do have. This is where I hear the term blended finance all the time.
It's moved from being a buzzword to an absolute necessity.
So how does it work? How do you turn a public dollar into a private one for development?
It really all comes down to managing risk. Blended finance uses ODA, a public resource, to absorb the kind of risk the private sector just won't touch.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so ODA funds could provide a first loss guarantee for, say, a huge new solar farm in a politically volatile country. That guarantee de-risks the whole project.
It makes it safe for the big investors.
Exactly. Suddenly it looks attractive to a pension fund or a big bank that would never have looked at it twice. It's a shield that unlocks much, much larger flows of private money.
So it's about multiplying the impact. But I know the sources point to a huge roadblock here, which is fragmentation. How is aid actually being wasted?
The OECD data on this is really clear. They call it the fragmentation challenge. Aid is often spread way too thinly, across too many countries in these small, not very strategic amounts.
So a project here, a project there.
Right. Focusing on isolated projects instead of big system-wide programs. And when you add in a lack of coordination between donors and, frankly, not enough alignment with what the partner countries themselves say they need,
You get waste, duplication, less impact.
far less impact on the ground.
And the solution, according to the DI chair, has to be stronger, more inclusive collaboration.
It's vital, and that collaboration has to go way beyond the traditional DIC members, the US, the EU countries.
It needs to include the so-called South providers.
Yes, countries in Latin America, Southeast Asia like Thailand and Indonesia, and partners in the Arab world, Turkey. The goal is to learn from everyone and coordinate efforts.
Speaking of coordination and leadership,
Yeah.
the sources really highlight Korea's story. What is it that makes Korea's voice so important in this discussion right now?
It's just a living, credible example of success. I mean, think about the speed of that transformation from a developing country in the 50s and 60s to this vibrant, dynamic economy it is today.
It shows it's actually possible.
It shows that progress is achievable when you have vision, local ownership, and international systems working together.
And as a G20 member, that success brings a certain responsibility, doesn't it?
It does. Korea is expected to help set trends and show leadership. For instance, the DAC peer reviews suggest Korea could be even more influential by focusing more on the multilateral front,
So working more with the big development banks, the UN system.
instead of focusing quite so much on its own bilateral efforts. That would directly attack that fragmentation problem we were just talking about.
And Korea is also a big leader on climate.
A huge leader. Their whole approach is described as learning by doing, so their national experience with the green transition becomes a direct source of insight for everyone else. They're really encouraged to keep shaping the global norms and standards.
Okay, we have to turn to the numbers now because, well, they are alarming. We've talked about this gap between needs and resources, and the data confirms we are on a crisis trajectory.
The figures are stark. They should genuinely concern you. Global ODA peaked in 2023 at $213 billion.
That was the high point.
That was the peak. Now, the projections for 2024 through 2027 show a, frankly, terrifying drop.
How sharp are we talking?
We're already expecting a drop of somewhere between 7 and 9% just this year. But the worst-case scenario, it's almost catastrophic.
What is it?
ODA could fall by nearly 30% by 2027.
30%. If global needs are rising exponentially, how can the system possibly absorb a cut like that?
It can't, not without very severe consequences.
So what's the DSE doing to adapt? They must see this cliff coming.
They do. They've launched this major ongoing review, which started in Seville, aimed at adapting ODA's role. They're focused on two big shifts. First, moving beyond just looking backwards at data, to providing forward-looking analysis and projections, helping donors understand the future impact of the decisions they're making today.
And the second shift, does it address that coordination problem?
It does. They want to move away from focusing only on what donors need from the data and start listening more to what the partner countries on the ground need to make the data useful for them.
Which all ties into this idea of ODA as a catalyst.
Exactly. ODA doesn't solve the problem on its own, but it enables these other much larger financial flows to work. We talked about blended finance, but remittances are another huge one.
Right, the money migrant workers send home.
That flow of money is bigger than all global ODA combined, every single year. So ODA doesn't fund the remittance, but it can, say, fund the digital financial infrastructure in a country.
So it makes it cheaper and easier for people to send money home.
Precisely. Less money is lost to fees, more money gets used for education, for healthcare, for starting a business. ODA creates the scaffolding to make these bigger flows more effective.
This brings us right back to the core argument. ODA isn't charity. It's shared global self-interest. To get public support, the message has to be that this affects donor countries directly.
That is the critical message. This isn't just empathy, it's self-preservation. Look at pandemic preparedness. COVID showed us that's the ultimate global challenge.
And the risk hasn't gone away.
Not at all. There's an estimated 1 to 2% risk every single year of another event like that. ODA is what builds the global system of preparedness and response.
And this strategic argument applies to new challenges too, like AI.
Absolutely. ODA can help shape how these new technologies serve humanity rather than dominate it. And crucially, it helps counter the rise of authoritarian systems and, the replacement of public interest media with social media.
So ODA can support independent, fact-based journalism.
Through organizations like UNESCO, yes, which is essential for open, democratic discussion everywhere.
This all boils down to that political fight, especially in Europe, between urgent short-term needs like defense and these longer-term global investments.
And the DAIC chair is very clear. It cannot be an either-or. It has to be a both-and approach. Europe has to strengthen its defense, but it must also keep addressing global challenges.
Because if you wait,
You miss the window. The eventual costs become exponential, and the crisis becomes far more difficult, if not impossible, to manage.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the key takeaway here is that ODA is a strategic, vital investment in a resilient global system. It's not charity. And this projected decline is a huge challenge that needs real political leadership to reverse.
And, this need for both a domestic debate and international partnership, it reminds the DAIC chair of the Roman god Janus, the god with two faces. He sees these big development conferences as having two faces.
One looking inward and one looking outward.
Exactly. One face is domestic, to spark a public debate about why this matters. The other is international, promoting these more inclusive partnerships between everyone involved.
That partnership has to endure. And if ODA's main purpose, as we've discussed, is to be a catalyst for those other bigger financial flows like remittances and private finance, here's a provocative thought for you to explore. How might a projected 30% drop in ODA funding completely undermine our ability to mobilize those much larger flows, and in doing so, jeopardize all the progress of fragile states that depend on them to build stable societies?
The math on that long-term strategic cost is daunting.
We'll leave you there. Until next time, keep diving deep.